Ani, hello. Thank you for joining us today on our fifth feature focus, a live Q&A for the dramatic feature film Legend of Baron Toa. You're going to say it better, by Kiel McNaughton, which will be available on demand until Sunday, October 25th. We will be taking some questions from the viewers as well, so be sure to ask your questions in the chat. Thank you to our presenting partner, Crave, and our screening partner, the DGC, Directors Guild of Canada. My name is Darlene Naponse. I am one of the guest programmers for the IN Festival 2020 Programming Committee. And joining us today is director Kiel McNaughton and producer Kerry Warkia. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves and say hi.
Kia ora koutou. Called Kiel McNaughton, tōku ingoa. I'm in New Zealand at the moment. I'm actually at my my family home in Manurewa in South Auckland. Kerry and I actually live in Taranaki, which is a bit further south in New Zealand. And it's 7 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
Morena, I'm Kerry Warkia. Pretty much what Kyle said, we're in the same place, in Tamaki Makaurau, which is Auckland, in New Zealand at the moment, at his mum and dad's home. Really happy to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Okay, so questions. How did this story come to you, and how did it all begin?
Yeah, well, we were at a friend's. Kerry and I married. We were at a friend's wedding in Fiji, and we kind of bumped into a colleague of ours who's a script writer in his spare time, I guess. And he'd been working on a low budget feature that he was wanting to get made with a producing partner, and he'd kind of written it for his producing partner, who's also an actor. But they were struggling to get it up, and so we talked about it, and he ended up sending it to me, and I read it, and immediately the things that popped out were, one, that it was an action film, but two, that it was a low budget action film set in one location, which was a cul-de-sac. And the thing that it really had going for it was, instead of guns, it was paint cans, and there was infused with a vernacular that the writer has, that was something I hadn't heard before, and so from there, Kerry and I, we optioned it. We decided to take it on, but we encouraged the writer to write it more from we wanted it to be a brown story. We wanted the characters to be brown, and originally he'd written it for his Pākehā producing partner. But the writer himself, John Argyle, is half Tongan. And so we encouraged him to write it from his Tongan perspective, which he did. And he just ran with that. And that's how the film became, The Legend of Baron Toa.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had so much fun watching this, and I just love that there's, like you were saying, there's no guns or anything, and it's really about the community and family, and you know what I mean? It really still talks about all of those, issues that are happening around our communities, and around, those bigger issues around historical trauma. But really there's so much about the love of the community and family. How was that, and you including within the language, when you were in production, was that, must have been part of that, that whole feeling of community and language and people?
Yeah, that's right. When obviously, because the Tongan element that John brought to the script was so strong, we decided as a production to embrace that as much as we can, and an imagineNATIVE audience would understand this more than more than most audiences, how that kind of cultural specificity is really important. when you've created something that's from a cultural perspective, in order to honor that cultural perspective, acknowledge it, not just on the screen, but behind the scenes as well. And we did make that part of the production. And as you see at the very beginning of the film, there is a whakatapu, which is something that was suggested to us. It wasn't originally planned, but it was suggested to us by our Tongan cultural consultants. That and you might have a better memory of the significance of that, but it was suggested that we do that because the Tongan community, or in the Tongan culture, there are different kind of degrees of language, because it's the kingdom of Tonga. There is a kind of a hierarchy in terms of language, and the idea or the expectation is that when you're speaking in public, there's a specific level of language that you use. And so part of that whakatapu was an explanation to the royal family, the Tongan royal family, that we're not using that higher level of language. We're speaking at a more commoner language.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for because I was wondering about that, and I was kind of wondering how I would ask that. So thank you for sharing that that understanding. So personal growth and and family and community. Kyle, when you were directing it, how did you play with those themes within your own direction?
Yeah, all along, I guess for me there was a theme of I guess masculinity, which was in there from the very early drafts of the script. That it started off as a much more violent and much more masculine piece that it eventually became. And all along, I wanted to be able to make a film that I could watch with my kids, with my two boys, and enjoy it, and try and convey these themes of legacy, of father-son relationships, and then of wider community relationships, and your responsibility towards that community. And I guess it was really apparent that what we were building was like a microcosm in the world of this cul-de-sac. And so the idea was that when Fritz steps into this, he steps back into this cul-de-sac of his youth. He's stepping back into this world, and he's essentially in that world for the entirety of the film, and we're inside that world for the entirety of the film, and that's the community. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think also one of the beautiful things that came out of the scripting process, and I think for Kyle as well as a director, kind of watching these Pacific Island characters and men who are in quite a violent kind of, wrestling is quite a full-on sport, and can be seen as kind of a violent sport. But it was nice to see the moments of tenderness and connectedness between the male characters, which is something I think is that those things coexist within, sort of my family and my family's background. And it was nice to see them on screen when that isn't necessarily represented when it comes to Pacific stories that involve men. And that was really important. And I think we really saw that through without bashing people over the head with it, because it is, pulling it through humor, but then having beautiful moments of when you see him with his uncle, or having these lovely tender moments, and eventually having that moment with his dad too. Seeing love there was important.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, because I was just thinking when you were talking, it was just like there was so much humility within the humor and the teasing, and just like, as family and community does, and bringing out those vulnerabilities, but yet still kind of mixing with this idea of this, like, gonna be the champion and this belt, and yeah.
Yeah, still all of that kind of fun and honor and legacy and, mana and all of those sorts of things that come, I guess, for men, in terms of a cultural sense, as well as kind of the sense of the sport. But also, yeah, having that lovely softness and tenderness that, I've always felt from my uncles, my fathers, my, cousins, who are male, but we don't see that necessarily on the screen when other people portray Pacific men.
Yeah. Now I was just that fight scene at the end where and then with the little girl, and then he's like he's like, oh no, in the middle of a fight, he's like no, we've really set this up, you know what I mean? And then when he takes the girl and then she's like, I'm a tag team. He's like, no. Like, it's just such a balance of like, just like action, stop, humor, and then like, all right, let's go for a fight again. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's something we really wanted to get across, and it was in the script from the very beginning. Again, that writers vernacular, and
it was a bit of a contentious point, a part of the story that we had to consistently, argue for, that this is going to be a lovely moment. This is going to be a light moment. This isn't going to be, so yeah.
Children engaging in fights,
but it's going to be great.
But it's interesting, and it comes down to establishing a style and tone, which was something that was always, we were constantly talking about how do we establish the right kind of tone and style in order to pull off this, like what you've been saying, everything in terms of the action, but bringing the community and the humility and the humor, but still trying to make it fit inside an action genre.
Yeah, kind of an action genre that's kind of roots. I was going to say that action genre that's still from a grassroots place.
Yes. Let's talk about the genre. Like, it's, you don't see this often, so it was really refreshing and fun. And what brought you kind of towards that genre? Did you grow up in wrestling, or are you into martial arts, or you're just like, you know what I mean, wanted to just explore something new?
Yeah, I was into martial arts as a teenager, and then after drama school, I got into stunt work for a little while when we had our first baby. Neither of us were getting any acting work, and so I kind of segued into stunts and met a whole bunch of really cool guys who were part of Lord of the Rings, and then getting on to bigger and better things. And the great thing about making this film and making it an action film was that I got to work with all those guys again who had gone on to do like the latest X-Men films, and that they were so such professionals and loved working at home, because they don't usually get to make this kind of movie unless they go offshore. And the other great thing about that was that our stunt coordinator Augie Davis is Fijian, and our fight coordinator Andy Stelline is Samoan. And so just having these guys with such a connection to the story was just fantastic, and they all loved it. And so it's our first, in terms of our work, it's the first time we've dipped our toes in the genre pool, and we just love it, and we are wanting to bring Maori Pacifica, South Pacific stories and make them genre, bring our stories into the genre realm.
Yes, I want to see more. We'll get to what's up next, but for you guys and the new genres, but I want to ask a kind of like, it must, when you were shooting this film, like there's a lot of action, there's a lot of running. Was there any kind of like funny stories, or how, you know what I mean, of making it? Like, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, was the like just maybe like, you know what I mean, for some of those running scenes, especially that long running scene when he's like, you know, how many times did you know, did he crash through that door, or you know what I mean, like just tracking him, and that cameraman who's, or camera woman who's like, you know, person who's just like tracking. Do you have any stories to share with us?
You're good at remembering stories. I mean, with that one, the greatest thing about that is that we found our cul-de-sac. We found our hero cul-de-sac quite early on, and then our locations manager,
who is someone,
he's someone, and he found that the path that that the foot chase takes place, it's literally in situ, on location. You go over a hill, and then all those houses are in a direct line.
Nice.
Cul-de-sac. Yeah, just over the hill. It's amazing.
It's really, really perfect, because we pretty much did just shoot in the cul-de-sac. I mean, we had built a couple of sets, but predominantly, you know, most of it was actually in the cul-de-sac. Like, our location manager was amazing. He had talked to everyone on the street and everyone in the neighboring street, and, you know, really kind of built a sense of community there. And in that area, they're actually a very multicultural and mostly Pacific kind of neighborhood. So they were all for it. But do you have some stories?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It was such a long time ago. I mean, I know that on one of the first days of rehearsal, one of the actors, because the actors do predominantly the most of their stunts, but one of our actors hurt their back on the first day of rehearsals, which isn't really funny. It's
not funny, but I mean, at the time we were really worried.
Yeah.
But you know, he pulled through, and that was really great. But yeah, I mean, most of them did their own stunts, which was incredible and slightly terrifying, I think, as a producer, because you don't want to lose. I mean, and I think also as a director, like as a team, you don't want to lose your actors.
No, yeah.
So we were very, very careful about that, and the stunt team were very careful about making sure they were training them properly. And actually the young boy Dwan, who he plays Royden, he had already been practicing and doing a lot of parkour and kind of free running stuff in LA, because he was on Avatar. And so Avatar had allowed him to be with us for that period, which we were really, really lucky to have him. And so he was keen as beans to kind of do all his put into practice all his, you know, we kind of had to just love the enthusiasm, but also really take care of him.
Yeah.
He's great. Like, yeah, when he's running and he's jumping over all of those. So yeah.
A really great kid, a really incredible kid, who yeah, is just fantastic. And he has those big monologues, and he's actually dyslexic. So he was amazing.
Yeah.
He was really amazing. Yeah. One story though is that there is in the script we had, when the character jumps into the Fijian home backyard, he the lead character, he comes up against a goat, and he has to like have this fight with the goat. But we were going to have to try and train a goat, and then it was going to cost like a ridiculous amount of money. And so we thought we're going to have to change that, because we can't have the goat hurting the actor. If it goes wrong and the goat forgets its training, you know, forgets the routine, and then it hurts the actor. So then we decided really cheap $20 chickens were great. We just put you can just jump in and jump out.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Well, we're gonna wrap up. That's already 20 minutes. That went by so quickly. Thank you for sharing some stories. Okay, so what's up next? And please, yeah, share with us.
Yeah, so next we have a horror thriller with a Kiwi Samoan lead, female lead. Yeah, we're just finalizing kind of the script on that one, and then we're hoping to shoot it next year sometime.
Wow, great. Well, I look forward to that, and I'm sure all of the audience does too. Thank you, Miigwech, for joining us today. And I'm just gonna kind of do a little extra and say thank you to everybody for joining us today, and join me again. I'm on the Focus Featured Live for the Q&A of Pulunuk Iskira, Happiness Scares Me No More, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern on this platform. And I invite you all to come back and join me and the artists as we continue with some exciting programs. Be sure to check out the website each day of the festival schedule and all good things we have planned. On that note, thank you again for joining us. And thank you for sharing this film. It's so much fun. And yes, just keep bringing those like beautiful stories and those fun stories, and yeah, and going into different genres. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Darlene. Thank you, and thanks imagineNATIVE for having us.
Yes. Enjoy the festival, everybody. Take care.
Bye.